said forget it, Mike, okay? I'm going home.
Come on, Will.
Move!
Will, come on. You can't leave. It's raining. Listen, I said I was sorry, all right? It's a cool campaign. It's really cool. We're just not in the mood right now.
Yeah, Mike, that's the problem. You guys are never in the mood anymore. You're ruining our party. That's not true. Really? Where's Dustin right now? See? You don't know, and you don't even care, and obviously he doesn't either, and I don't blame him. You're destroying everything, and for what? So you can swap spit with some stupid girl? Elle's not stupid. It's not my fault you don't like...
They're nobodies. And you're a superhero.
If I asked you to describe... Oof, okay. Okay. Kind of like this, okay. If I asked you to describe Mike Wheeler from Stranger Things, what words would come to mind? Would be protective, a leader, mischievous, brave, loud, maybe nerdy. Or another thing that can come to mind is that he's kind of an asshole. He's inconsiderate. And just simply talks out of his ass all the time. He's truly a character who is dealing with a lot. And we've seen him grow a lot in the last almost 10 years since Stranger Things has premiered on Netflix in 2016. He's a character who is just simply knows how to repress a lot of his feelings. And I've seen a lot of takes, theories, and videos that discuss all of that in a perfect amount of nuance to a character such as him. And truly, one of the things that truly makes sense the most is asking the question, is he truly a character who's dealing with a lot of trauma, repressed emotions, and, surprisingly to some, internalized homophobia, or is he just simply a homophobic, terrible friend and boyfriend? That's truly the question. And unfortunately, we got the latter in the series finale. However, I'm not satisfied with the answer. In fact, I and a lot of other people who have better who made better theories and analysis on this character strongly disagree, because there's more to him than that. It's writing him off too much. I don't agree. I don't agree with that statement. Mike Wheeler is one of the main characters in the Netflix show Stranger Things, a sci-fi show about a boy who went missing due to supernatural forces, and his loved ones tried to find him with the help of a girl with telekinetic powers. He's played by Finn Wolfhard, and, we watched Mike Wheeler grow from the heart of the party, leader, protector of his friends, specifically Will and Eleven, to suddenly a jerk and an insecure mess, to then, in the finale, a hollow shell of the person he was and a copy of his father, Ted Wheeler. Again, I personally don't accept that take of him at the end, because since rewatching the show, this is coming from someone who has been a casual viewer of Stranger Things and has kind of gotten into the lore, towards heading up to season 5 premiering. He's actually a pretty complex character. There are plenty of videos announcing his character journey. Some of my most favorite characters lately have been complex characters, and I actually have been sort of doing a little bit analysis of my own in my head, and even in podcast episodes about these characters. A while ago, I've made a video talking about Richard Cameron from Dead Poets Society, how he was a character who was easily written off as the overtly villain character in Dead Poets Society, simply because he ratted the other poets out. However, I didn't like that sudden black and white thinking of Richard Cameron. He was very much a character who craved validation from his teachers and his other peers. He was repressing a lot of emotions. He wanted to be the perfect student. He wanted to be the most ideal. He wanted to be perfect. I think he was also dealing with a lot of like internalized homophobia too. In fact, I feel like that makes it more understandable towards him and Charlie's hostility towards each other, because it was a mixture of like wanting to impress Charlie and also a genuine dislike to him to an extent. Needless to say, all these things, I made a video talking about him, and just simply the fact that we're writing him off too quickly. And that's what I'm trying to like do with this episode with Mike Wheeler. We need to talk about this because I don't like how this story ended. And it's not because of what you're thinking. We'll get to that. We'll get to it. We'll get to the big elephant in the room. I know that's why you clicked on this video, because of the intro and then the thumbnail. We'll get to it. We will get to it. We'll get to that big elephant in the room. If you made it this far, welcome to the podcast. Let's discuss. I'm your host, Nick Marshall, and I just simply get on here and just simply talk about whatever I want. And let's just get into it. Let's just get into the complex character that is Mike Wheeler. To start this out, let's just talk about what makes a well-written character, since I've said that Mike Wheeler is a well-written character. There have been many characters in literature and film and TV that we've all grown to love and feel connected to on some level, that feel like they represent something inside of us. However, there are only few that we can truly say that were well-written, complex characters. For example, Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind. She is considered to be a very well-written female character, which is very rare because when writing characters of like other groups, particularly women, they fall into very one-dimensional box categories. What makes a character feel like well-written is the fact that they can make you feel a range of emotions. 1 minute you're rooting for them, and the second you're getting very annoyed with their actions. And then you're feeling a sense of discomfort with how much you're relating to this character. Also, when they're like being like called out by other characters in the story, you feel a sort of like protectiveness. Their number one defender. You're giving these like big explanations of why this is happening in your head. You're not excusing their behavior. You're just giving an explanation because you don't like that they're being written off as one way by this character and them not understanding the situation that they're in. And back to the discomfort part, I've had 2 experiences when reading a book and watching a show where I have felt 1, discomfort, and then 2, I was truly understanding and getting defensive and very analytical and like therapy talking this character's actions. Number 1, I was watching Ginny and Georgia, the first season, years ago. And I hated Ginny. Not hate, but I found her character very uncomfortable. Not in the fact that she was I can't explain it, but she often had a tendency to be very fake to an extent. Or when she was saying something I can't explain it, but it was just something about her attitude in general sometimes. And it made me feel uncomfortable because it's something that I feel like I am in my own head, because I just felt like I related to it too much, because I felt like I said some of the things she said in the past, and it made me feel uncomfortable because it was like, wait a minute, is that how I sound to some people? Another example, I recently finished a book in the summer. The book was on Wattpad. It was called How to Stay Afloat. And one of the main characters, his name was Sammy. He was dealing with addiction, and he recently experienced trauma and losing his best friend, and he had to move just not too long after his best friend's death. I saw him like slowly like lose his mind a little bit in some parts, and then see some of his loved ones feel very like disappointed and betrayed, and sometimes scared with some of his actions, and sometimes even judging him and writing him off too quickly. And I personally was like his number one. Like I was feeling a lot of things with Sammy, and I was like getting so angry at the same time, because it was like, you're making me so pissed off right now. This isn't, I'm just so pissed off. And then like when something bad happened to him, very traumatic happened, I was like, okay, I am on your side. I'm going to like protect you in this moment. I am on your side. I'm not gonna like excuse all your bad behavior, but I'm going to be explaining a lot in my own head when some characters were just being like acting a mess. And that's what happened. Like I was truly like by his side. I was truly understanding him. He was making me feel so many things. The point of what I'm saying is that when a character is more like 3D, they're making you feel all these emotions. The character isn't flat or like one-dimensional, because again, I said before, characters often do fall into tropes and boxes. Even with like the most colorful personalities, they do like fall into those boxes. It's just an inevitability when writing stories and like creating like characters and all that. With this very rare three-dimensional character that you're seeing, you get more depth into him and actually understand this character. Not to the point where everything they do feels very predictable and boring. It's just you realize that this character has more layers, and they're representing something. They're representing the fact that a lot of things in life are in gray. It's not always in black and white. To an extent, most things in life are in gray. However, it's that rare example when things do get into a very black and white scenario. That's where Mike Wheeler comes in, because he is one of those characters that is complex, that do have a lot of layers, but the problem is we never truly understood what was going inside of his what was going on inside of his head, besides the obvious like defeating Vecna, finding Will, all that, or like L, what was truly going on in his head, we never found out. And we thought that we were going to get that in season 5, but unfortunately we didn't. He falls under the complex character like label, is due to his depth and his contradiction and internal conflict, processing multiple layers and shifting his moods and like clashing motivations that make them feel very realistic. Hence like season 3, his transition from season 2 to season 3, something like shifted in an instant, and then we caught onto it. We were kind of like, like a lot of fans like caught onto it instantly, because something was going on, and there's something going on deeper below the surface. It didn't simply, him and Elle got together and then things just happened and it's just teenage emotions. Like, no, something happened. We learn more through him with his own relationships to the other characters within Stranger Things. Specifically, again, you'll hear this coming up a lot with Eleven and Will. And more specifically, I guess like we can like start asking the question, like, who really is Mike Wheeler? And an overall Google overview would say that he's loyal, protective, and often self-sacrificing, and the often self-sacrificing leader of the party, driven by deep bonds with his friends, especially Will and Eleven, though his strong need for control and emotional attachment can make him stubborn and insecure, contrasting his heroic actions with internal struggles for self-worth and emotional vulnerability. He's the archetypal archetypal D&D paladin, always showing up for loved ones, but his growth involves learning to trust and accept emotional complexity beyond just fixing problems, moving from reactive to a more mature responses. My own personal notes on him is simply the fact that He comes from a very conservative middle-class family. The Wheelers, in particular, are the typical archetype of the American family in the 80s during Ronald Reagan's presidency. His parents are in kind of like a dry marriage, with his father being the king of like unavailable and unbothered, while his mother is loving and caring, but also is kind of clueless and kind of inconsistent, and kind of like she's kind of like going through the motions with it at the same time. This, and along with like being bullied his whole life, had left him with a lot of insecurity and need to feel needed. I can personally relate. Mike, being the unofficial leader, positions himself to be the protector of his family and friends. This comes out mostly to Will. Being his best friend, protecting him at all costs, defending him, trying to find him in season 1, protecting him against his bullies. He truly does position himself to be the caregiver and the protector and the provider and then like the leader. And this also comes out with 11. And in season 1, being the only one outside of Joyce to believe that Will is alive with even very little proof than Joyce. And then he spends like both seasons 1 and 2 having one thing on his mind: finding Will and protecting and saving Will. Mike's love language is simply acts of service, and he likes to feel needed. And he's afraid of not being enough for the people he loves, like Will in 11. However, his story arc went ahead and proved all of his insecurities to be true in the end, but really, it's the furthest things from, because everything before Volume 2 of Season 5 proved entirely different. That he is the leader, he is needed, that he is truly loved by everybody. He's also the type of person to ball up everything. Again, a lot of people can relate. His trauma of losing and thinking his best friend is dead, having guilt with 11 sacrificing herself twice, and most definitely his insecurity of feeling like he's just a useless nerd. He's basically just the I'm fine meme personified, and then like, and then he like tries to cover it up with just simply overcompensating with being a leader, being protective, and like doing all these things, which is something that a lot of people have talked about, especially with. There's a video that I am going to be recommending. It's from the channel Loser Sits By Herself. She does 2 videos on this. The first one is the queer coding and internalized homophobia of Mike Wheeler, and then I think it was like Mike's emotional repression. She does a better job of like analyzing this than I am. But like anyway, there was a huge chance in season 5, I say this again, to reveal all the shit he's been dealing with. But it just left fans very disappointed with the ending, sealing the very untrue fact that he was just simply a dick. However, there was a much better explanation for his behavior, and you know what I'm going to be talking about: his internalized homophobia and his compulsory heterosexuality. Before we dive in, the definition of compulsory heterosexuality is a theory coined by Adrian Rich that society reinforces heterosexuality as the default mandatory sexual orientation through patriarchal norms, media, institutions, pressuring individuals, specifically women, into relationships with the opposite sex, even when it's not their genuine desire. And internalized homophobia is when LGBTQ plus individuals subconsciously adopt society's negative views about homosexuality, leading to self-hatred, shame, low self-esteem, and denial or suppression of their own sexual orientation of queer identities. Like the video by Loser Sits By Herself is saying, Mike's Wheeler's characterization is heavily queer-coded, and it falls under both compet and internalized homophobia. At first glance, Mike doesn't quote-unquote present as a gay boy, with him having interests in superheroes and board games. To audiences, they don't see the quote-unquote feminine or sensitive characteristics that everyone seemed to have clocked onto Will within an instant within the pilot. This is where his story would have been very groundbreaking. It could have given a more realistic representation of how people assume queer people to be a certain way, and the person who you least expect to be queer is queer. It's simply a spectrum you don't really know. Mike's queer coding is more realistic in my opinion, and it's more like a story that I personally relate to, on especially the compulsory heterosexuality part, because I personally relate to that. Mike's reactions to girls in the early seasons is something to note of. When Max was introduced in the second season, Lucas and Dustin were immediately smitten and wanted to get her attention, while Mike was just completely confused and unimpressed by her, not seeming to get why Dustin and Lucas were even like so crazy about her. This could have been written off as him not wanting their group to change, and him missing Eleven and not wanting her to be replaced. And in this instance, like, multiple things can be true. Like, multiple things are true. Like, that's true too. It's a mixture of like everything, with not wanting things to change because he doesn't like when things change, and also he was missing Eleven, and also feeling guilty at the same time, and also feeling left out with not automatically being interested in a girl like Lucas and Dustin, and it was obvious. And also like Max and Eleven's presentation, in a sense, is something to know of, with Eleven just looking like a boy throughout the first season, and Max just looking more like girly. His reactions is something to take note of. And again, the YouTuber of the name Loser Sits By Herself does a much better job at discussing this. He also tends to look to Lucas as a role model for relationship advice, often copying what he thinks he's supposed to do in a heterosexual relationship. As an example would be like in season 3, when Mike and Eleven were like, he was trying to like avoid Eleven. Lucas was like giving him all sorts of advice, holding his hand through all of that, like to what to do. But in that same episode, like whenever Will is upset, he automatically knows what to do. No one needs to hold his hand in order to navigate his relationship with Will, the way everyone has to like hold his hand and tell him what to do when he's with Elle. Which brings us to the massive can of worms that you've all been waiting for. Was the Eleven and Byler of it all. We're going there. We're going there. When it comes to the shipping wars, this was something to remember for years to come. There have been many shipping wars in television history. I've seen quite a few. I've seen them very recently with The Summer I Turned Pretty. But with Stranger Things, it was top tier. I gotta say, in my opinion, it was top tier. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Eleven is the romantic pairing of Mike and Eleven, and Byler is the romantic pairing of Mike and Will. Both ships being very popular among fans and had the potential of being quote-unquote endgame in the series finale, with the result being neither, even though we did have a Eleven kiss. It was very not satisfying for people who shipped them, because they spent the majority of the time proving the exact opposite, while in the end promoting them as like the true OTP. And then Finn Wolfhard and Millie Bobby Brown had like post that photo shoot with them being like, oh yeah, the storyteller and then the mage, and like it was so unserious, because the show has spent the entire time doing the exact opposite, because they weren't really like the actual OTP. If you don't know what it is, it's just one true pairing in like fandom terms. For example, God, characters hating the ship, season 3 as a whole, with them like with them proving that like they're very like codependent and toxic, the cast making jokes about it, to even the comments in the script having a very sarcastic attitude towards the pair. I'm not making this up, you can look this up, with the note after their first kiss in season 1 being quote unquote, there, he did it. And then season 3 and 4, where they were spent like tearing down the relationship and building Eleven's arc around finding independence with her life, because her life was so heavily controlled by men, and it seemed like that's where it was going. That was going to be the case. But then like the Duffer Brothers reduced her arc to being some male fantasy of childhood having to grow up, having to go away, so Mike and the others can grow up. It was like it's a very fucked up message, because like it was like a mind game of sorts, and there are plenty of videos that are going to be talking about this. So watch those videos, because like I'm still confused about this myself, but like it seemed like that's where it was going for a minute. It seemed like Eleven was truly going to be like finding her own story, because of the fact taking Byler out of the equation, Maleven is a very like problematic relationship. It's a very like it doesn't sit well with me the more I think about it because of the fact that like 11 was raised in a lab. She just escaped the lab when she was like 11 years old, 11 and 12 years old. And 6 days later, she just met this boy, and then like he's kissing her, and then like she doesn't know what anything is. She doesn't know what anything is. She's still like learning like literally everything, and it's so creepy. But it's like they're all the same age, so we're not really like clocking it right away. So it's like so weird. And like it could have been like a beautiful story about like this bond between Mike and 11 because that's how they work. That's how they can truly work. If we tell a story about how this beautiful friendship and soulmate level connection came to be, then we can simply like promote this as like the storyteller and the mage and how their connection is so beautiful too, while also like propping up a very popular ship, Byler. We can prop up both of them as like these two important people, like Will and 11 are these two very important people in Mike's life, and they don't exactly outweigh the other, except it's so like we could have had it all. We could have like done a very great compromise of simply keeping Mike and 11 platonic and have Mike and Will be together, because that makes narratively the most sense, not because oh this ship would be cuter than this, no, because the way it's written, it seems to make more sense that this was going to happen. What makes this worse was making Mike's tendencies to make her insecurities and feelings of not belonging even worse, with him not being able to say I love you twice. He couldn't say I love you then in season 4. He couldn't even say I love you in his own mind. He couldn't even say it then. And also not even showing in his actions. Instead, he just yells and acts petty and distant when things get tough. Exhibit A, Wrinklemania, when Angela humiliated her, and he didn't even do much to help her. He didn't even comfort her and make sure she's okay. He just simply kept his distance, like he was ashamed, and also he was scared of her. Lord, oh my god. He was acting like an ass both in the same episode. Like, how are we supposed to like this character when he's such an ass? It's so hard to give him grace because he's such an ass. Like, oh my god, I can go into a whole tangent, but like it's just ridiculous. And his love confession was also based on a lie. With only the true thing that he said was that he loves her, but the thing is, not once in the entire 5 seasons of Stranger Things, in the entire nearly decade of the show, we've never truly got a concrete evidence of that he was in love with her. He loves her, obviously, but he was never truly in love with her. Which makes the switch up in the finale and all the promotion of like trying to prop up 11 as like, oh, this was like the true end game all along, and like there was no other plans. It makes it so sketchy because that obviously wasn't true. And it's not even like a true win for people who even like were shipping them in the first place, because of the potential state of ambiguity of their relationship in season 5. Because in season 4 they weren't even talking at the end, and we had more Byler scenes in season 4. Ridiculous. It's like the switch up was ridiculous. If they were trying to make Mike and 11 the true OTP, they could have just simply had more scenes of them getting to actually know each other, them actually growing, actually communicating, actually exhibiting displays of like a healthy relationship. They could have had Elle actually commission the painting in the first place. We'll get to that in a minute. They could have done so much, but they decided to just simply queerbait. And this is where we get into Byler. Okay, let's just talk about it. Mike and Will are a completely different story. They are. From the very first episode, Mike and Will's relationship is emphasized to be different from their own individual relationships with their other friends, Lucas and Dustin. Mike's queer coding was subtle, with him being the target of homophobia, of the homophobic comments about Will, and lines from his parents, "See What Happens" by Ted, and his mother, "I don't want you to feel like you have to hide anything from me," when she was talking about Will when they still think he was dead. And this was all in season 1. And this became more clear in season 2 when Mike was by his side when Will was possessed by the mind flayer. Then in the season 2 finale, with Mike looking upset when he convinced Will to dance with a girl at the snowball dance. Mike's switch up in behavior in season 3 to Will was very confusing and telling at the exact same time. It shows that Will and Eleven occupy the same space in his place in his mind, and he feels like in order to be in a relationship with Eleven, he has to ignore Will completely. This becomes more evident in the rain fight when Mike and Will were having a huge argument, and Will's just simply was saying that he was just simply being a bad friend. He was completely ignoring all of his friends. And Mike replies, "It's not my fault you don't like girls." This happens both times. In season 3 and season 4, when Will was confronting him again at Rico Mania, simply saying how he hasn't called, hasn't really done much to keep up with him. And Mike simply says well, that's because Elle's my girlfriend, because Will mentioned that while he didn't do much with him, Elle has a book of letters from him. He thinks that writing Will letters is automatically romantic. Those 2 times, Will was honestly talking about him just simply being a friend to him. Even though we know that Will is in love with Mike, he still is trying to be his friend because he values their friendship the most, and Mike's not meeting him where he's at. And both times when he's confronting on him that he's simply being a shitty friend, Mike always says something in the forms of, "I'm not gay, we're not together," when that wasn't the topic at all. That's very telling. That's what he's thinking about with Will, because Will and Elle occupy the same space in his mind, because he would never say that to Lucas and Dustin. In fact, especially with that airport hug. The airport hug was so awkward. And that was a sorry ass hug. Because he hugged Dustin really tight in the previous episode, in that same season, mind you. And somehow he couldn't do that with Will. And don't say that, oh, well, he just didn't see him for a while, so it's awkward. Oh, he knows Will likes him and he doesn't want to give him the wrong idea. Well, first off, Will and him have been best friends for 10 years. They've known each other since they were 5 years old. So if you haven't seen your best friend of 10 years together, do you honestly think you're just going to give him a side pat? No, you're going to hug them real tight, especially if you haven't seen them for a year. Also, Mike didn't even know. He's very oblivious. He doesn't know at all that Will is gay or that he likes him. All he knows is that people have bullied him about him being gay, and he just simply defended Will because he's not a homophobic person. And we know this. So he doesn't really know that Will is gay or that he's in love with him. So that excuse doesn't work. It doesn't. Some evidence in more of his queer coding and how he views Elle and Will in that same space, he has both feelings for Will and Elle, is that in a heart-to-heart scene in season 4, he reveals that he expresses that the last year has been very weird for him, how Hawkins isn't the same without Will, not Will and Elle, just simply Will, because home is wherever Will is to Mike, and he feels very lost without Will, just as how Will has been feeling lost without him. He's also, in that scene, taking responsibility for being a dick towards him. In that previous episode, without Will or anyone having to explicitly tell him that, hey, you were being a dick. He just knows he was wrong, and he just immediately came to, take responsibility and apologize. In that same, or even, the previous episode before, Mike wasn't taking responsibility, and how he wasn't there for Elle when she was being bullied. He just simply was just, trying to be okay, so we're not going to talk about it. I guess, the audacity. It's he knows what to do when it comes to Will, but with Elle, everyone has to, hold his hand and tiptoe and, to guide him through step by step and how to navigate a relationship. But with Will, it's just so second-natured because of the fact that it's more natural. It's more easy with Will. Him and Eleven don't work romantically. Mike and Will can work on all levels. because of the fact they have a decade of friendship, they have very intense emotional romantic feelings for each other. Yes, I'm saying both have romantic feelings for each other. I don't care what the Duffer Brothers are saying, because all the evidence in the show says otherwise. Mike's character arc is mostly about overcoming repressing his feelings and finding confidence within himself to be more honest. And his relationship with Will makes him confront all these insecurities and his tendencies to like overcompensate and repress his emotions head on. Like Will's love for him and the painting that he made with him, calling him the heart of heart, and saying how Mike's love gives Will the strength to fight and he doesn't make him feel like a mistake, all under the guise of 11, by the way. Mike truly is the leader of this party, and he's the heart, truly. And he's truly at his best, and it's proven in Volume 1 of Season 5 that he is truly at his best when he's with Will, and Will's being there, supporting him, being his best friend, his partner, his potential boyfriend, especially, like unofficially, just giving him the love and confidence and he needs to be that leader instead of just simply moping around when he's like with 11, because that's just like it's a very interesting, like both of these relationships are so needed. I feel like 11 was very necessary to happen so that Byler could happen at the same time. Like these are just two relationships that he just needed in his life, that he needs in his life. It makes more sense to me that both relationships were needed for him. Like his relationship with 11 was needed in order for him to be in a relationship with Will, unfortunately, at the expense of like 11's feelings, unfortunately. But like it makes him a truly interesting character simply because he has to like confront his own insecurities and his own problems with his emotions, because his relationship with Will truly does like make him evolve and be better. Like Mike and Will are one of those ships that are so good because they both are so entwined with each other. They make the other's characters interesting and adds more layers to their own characters. Like they're interesting by themselves, but when they're together, it adds more layers to their characters. We learn a lot more about Mike when he's with Will, more than we do when he's with 11. Because when he's just with 11, he's just furniture, and he's reduced to just being the boyfriend, while Elle is reduced to being the manic pixie dream girl. We see his worst when he's with 11, and then we see his best when he's with Will, and that's what makes 11 and Byler so important to the story, because it adds more layers to him. It was so like hopeful and like important for Byler to happen on so many levels. And the way that the story was going in season 4 with the breakdown of 11 and the building up with Byler with cinematography, the looks, heart-to-heart scenes, and most of all, the Cyrano trope with Will giving Mike the painting and like lying about how Elle commissioned it, and like him basically giving a veiled love confession to him and like spurring him to say that he loves 11 at the end of season 4, and all the signs in volume 1, like Will being more hopeful, confiding in Robin giving him all this advice, all of these roads narratively pointed towards Mike and Will getting together, while Elle finds independence and happiness. And however, again, the Duffer Brothers decide to chicken out and leave everyone hanging with major plot holes unresolved. They truly had to like fuck up so many plot holes because they're so connected to this, like especially with the play. Because people have been saying, I haven't seen the play, but like anyway. If Mike and Will's relationship wasn't so central to Stranger Things, then them not ending up together would have not been the biggest deal. It was still going to be disappointing to fans, but it wouldn't have been like the biggest deal because it wouldn't have left like a huge plot hole. The fact is, like, the relationship is so central to the story, and things were built up to that happening because it made no sense. It's not narratively satisfying for Will to just simply be in love with Mike and have nothing for like all 5 seasons and to have it go nowhere. I've read this I read this I read this Tumblr post, and it just simply said, when was the last time you watched a show where one of the main characters was in love with the other main characters, and it was built up for the entire show, leading to some sort of grand confession, with the other character being so kind of like unaware to the depth of their feelings for whatever reason, and then have it end up in rejection or have nothing happen. And they like used an example with Phineas and Isabella, and I couldn't even think of like that scenario happening, because it's never happened, because no one truly writes a slow burn rejection. Crushes, like, if there were truly like an unrequited love story, then they could have like resolved it in season 3, and then season 4 there was no reason to like continue, because like everybody with a brain who watches and consumes literature, media, TV, like people who are truly like well versed in their and some film and like TV, they truly know that there's nothing narratively satisfying with Will being in love with Mike for all these seasons and like having it go nowhere, because it's like it's an overused trope. A gay boy being in love with his best friend, that's a very overused trope. We don't really need that representation. People have enough of that representation and have enough anecdotal evidence to write their own books about that. We don't need it broadcast on Netflix in front of the entire world and that humiliation ritual of it. We don't really need that reminder, okay? Like, even Will's coming out scene was very like offensive. Why emphasize that their relationship was so important? Like, why have them have why have them paralleled so many times? Like, why have them go through like the whole childhood, the best friends? Why make them so compatible with the other, and then like not do it, and then like show all these reasons why they should be together, and then like not do it? Because that's like, it's like, I can't say that, oh, they would lose money. They wouldn't lose money, because they were getting so much money from queer audiences anyway. So they would make a shit ton of more money if they made Byler canon. They would have made a shit ton more than the typical amount that they would have made. They made with propping up Malevolent. They would have made a shit ton more money with Byler being Endgame, especially if they actually like did a good job of finishing the story. Like, so much could have been done. Like, we could have had it. We truly could have had so much, and they chickened out. They really did. That's why we didn't get any more scenes with the core 4. That's why Patty didn't exist in the finale. That's why they broke Rob, Vicky, and even Jancy, because of the many parallels and the emphasis on how Mike's and Will's relationship is different from the core 4, and how they parallel a lot of canon couples to cover their tracks, especially with Rob, Vicky, and how the Rob, Vicky is the ship between Robin and Vicky, especially with that, because they saw the parallels. They intentionally did. They queerbaited so hard they had to like, okay, we gotta like switch it up. We gotta like break up this couple too. We gotta break up the only canon gay couple in the show, because they paralleled this they paralleled our queerbaited couple, Byler. So we gotta like break them up, and then we have to cover our tracks, and then we have to break up Jancy because they also paralleled them because they're their older siblings, and then all this stuff was happening. They had to like cover up their tracks, and they almost got away with it. However, people are not stupid. There are true fans of the show who've been watching it for a decade, and even casual fans like me who were like trying to like who got like woke up and got more into it. We realized what they were doing. Y'all were covering their tracks, Stuffer Brothers. Y'all aren't that smart or slick. We thought you were great writers, but like you're not that slick at all. The type of queerbaiting that was happening with them making Will gay, so while also like propping up the potential of Byler and even promoting it casually, and then having Netflix promote it, it was so deliberate, because it was like a huge plausible deniability, because people couldn't say, because they think that they're going with the definition of queerbaiting to be like, oh, well, this character is gay, so technically this isn't queerbaiting. So we can just simply say this is like a unrequited love on a straight guy. However, they made Mike so queer-coded that it wasn't even possible. They gave, like, I can't even like say it's unrequited, because technically, like, Mike didn't even personally reject him at all. Will rejected himself, and that's what makes it even more like, it's just, I don't know. But they do like parallel a lot of couples, especially Especially in the season 4 finale with the camera pointing at them, Jancy and Jopper, and 11 was alone. And a YouTuber pointed this out by the name of SK Rellington, mentioned how the scene could have been Mike and 11 together and have Will being alone since the Duffer said he was going to be taking center stage in season 5. And the subject of Byler, like the question if Byler was truly a queer bae or not, is pretty ridiculous because it so obviously was, but it was also a rage bait at the same time. They intentionally did this, especially towards the end with Mike saying, "Friends, no thanks, best friends," and I just simply cut off the episode right there and there because I was like, let's just get this over with. I truly did not finish the finale because my feelings were too hurt by this. My feelings were too hurt. I was too emotional by this. So I had to just simply turn it off. I was just like, okay, I'll just watch the finale at some point in the year. I'm just not watching it now. It was rage baiting because there were truly like rage baiting an audience who were really like simply analyzing TV and film. Especially a show where it's just like, it's interesting when we do analyze media, like in literature and shows, how anything can go, like any interpretation of anything can go when analyzing film and TV. But when it's queer, automatically that doesn't exist. Like analyzation, interpretation, who is she? Like it doesn't exist because immediately when it's queer, it's like, no, it's not like that. It's not like that. It's not gay. It's not gay at all. You're wrong. And you're crazy. You're delusional. You're mentally insane for thinking it. It bugs me so fucking much because it's like, okay, so all this is happening, any interpretation of film and media can go, but as long as it's not queer, it's correct. But the second someone can interpret something as queer when it's obviously queer, oh, then we're crazy. You're crazy. You're simply like pushing an agenda. You're crazy. I don't like when people... I don't like it when... I just hate it. I hate it so much. Like, I'm not even a true, like... I can't even say that I'm a Byler shipper because of the fact that, like, I got into it so late. I didn't catch on to it at all. None. No, I didn't catch on to it at all when I first watched Stranger Things in 2021. So I can't truly like say I am, but I love the ship so much because like it makes so much fucking sense and they're right. Even though it wasn't canon, they were so right because all this narrative evidence points to them being canon, but everyone is just simply saying, oh, they're crazy, and they're like trying to like make everything gay and all that. But like, excuse me, like a lot of queer people actually like enjoy this ship. Yeah. And we find this very relatable. And like, and they're trying like, I don't get it. I really don't get it. Because they're not crazy. They're not crazy. They're not crazy for simply analyzing film and TV and simply reading between the lines. That's exactly what our English teachers told us to do when analyzing, highlighting, actually like making interpretations and actually finding credible evidence. That's our English teachers taught this. But the second when it's queer, automatically it's incorrect. So I'm so confused. So any interpretation of film and media can like go either way. But the second it's queer, someone is pushing an agenda, someone is mentally ill, someone's crazy, they're projecting something. But anything can, it's so confusing and it's homophobic. And you can catch an attitude in the comments. I don't really care. You can do whatever. That's just my take. And last but not least, you heard this so many times, but like if Will was a girl, there would not be like a true debate if Byler was a true possibility because of the fact that like heteronormativity would tell us that all these interactions between Mike and Will, if Will was a girl, would point to Byler happening. And it was an actual possibility. The reason why people hate, Byler shippers so much is because it was an actual queer ship with actual possibility with it happening. Not like the other ships in the past did not have a possibility, but there's actually evidence. There's actually rooted in the plot. That's what makes it so like, kind of like a missed opportunity with Byler not happening. But anyway, to kind of like close this off, even though it's not like canon, Mike Wheeler in general was like a truly complicated character. And I feel like he's still a character that's worth representing, repressing one's emotions, and representation of queer people's internalized homophobia and compet that they see themselves in him. And it's clear that like the Duffer Brothers don't know how to write characters that well. It's becoming more obvious they didn't know what to do with Mike, and it's becoming more apparent with many people who have watched the fandom for years. True fans of the show have more clear, understandable analyzation of the character than they did, because they just saw him as like a self-insert. In the end, Mike Wheeler wasn't really an asshole or inconsiderate. He wasn't truly like an asshole or inconsiderate. He's very kind, he's loyal, he's protective, he's the best friend, and he just has a true heart of gold. He's just simply a character who is very complex, who does the wrong things sometimes, who says the wrong things, who can be a jerk at times, but he truly does show up, and he's truly reliable, and he's shown that to all of his friends, especially Will, and him and Will are so perfect together, and it makes so much sense. And then he and Elle also are like the perfect representation of like platonic soulmates, then finding each other and learning so much about each other. He's Eleven's first friend, and he could have been like a better friend to her in the end, with him just simply being very like protective. Like, he could have just said so much, he could have done more, but unfortunately that didn't happen. But like, at this point, we should just simply ignore what's actually canon at this point for him, and just simply look beyond to the fact that like, he is a good representation of like queer people who experience compulsory heterosexuality, homophobia, one's intentions to like bottle things up, have trouble with expressing one's emotions, and also just simply the reality of being human, who just simply messes up, and just simply see him for the actual true complex character that he truly is, regardless of canon, because again, the Duffer Brothers can't write for shit, and everyone had a better understanding of the character. I guess like the question I said at the beginning, is he kind of like wasted potential? I wouldn't say wasted potential, I would just simply say a missed opportunity, because he could have been so much, but he truly is the most well-written character in Stranger Things and TV. And because of that, he's actually one of my favorite characters in the end. But that's all I have for today. Thank you for listening to Let's Discuss. You can find the podcast on Spotify, anywhere you stream podcasts. If you got made this far, you can like and subscribe. And comment if you like this video. It's been pretty long. And you can follow me, nick.marshall, at nick.marshall02, all lowercase, on Instagram. And you can follow the podcast at Let's Discuss Podcast _ all lowercase. And I hope you guys have a beautiful rest of your day, month, year, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. It's been a nice talk. All right, bye.